I can still remember the day after the earthquake that shattered Haiti in 2010. Our island, already fragile, was brought to its knees. The air was thick with the dust of collapsed buildings, the cries of the injured and the lost echoed through the streets, and the ground beneath our feet felt like it could give way at any moment. But even as everything around us seemed to crumble, there was hope, a fragile, desperate hope that Haiti could rise from the rubble and rebuild stronger than before. We believed in that hope because we had no other choice. The world watched as homes crumbled, families were torn apart, and a country's spirit seemed to sink into the earth itself. The outpouring of international support was overwhelming. Countries from all over the globe promised aid, donations flooded in, and organizations set up emergency response teams on the ground. And through all that destruction, there was one thing that stood out, a light at the end of the tunnel: PetroCaribe. You see, PetroCaribe wasn't just some oil deal. It was more than that. It was a lifeline, a promise from Venezuela to help its struggling neighbors, Haiti included, by providing discounted oil. And the money saved from those oil purchases, it was supposed to be reinvested into rebuilding our shattered land. Billions of dollars that could have turned the rubble into homes, could have rebuilt roads, schools, and hospitals, and could have restored hope. But that hope was betrayed. And the most painful part? It wasn't some foreign invader that came in and plundered our resources. No, we were betrayed by our own, the very people who were supposed to protect and uplift us, the leaders who were meant to guide us through our darkest days. Instead, lined their pockets while our people suffered. The PetroCaribe Fund was more than just oil money, it was our future. It was the chance for us to rebuild our homes and our dignity. Billions flowed into the country, and for a brief moment, it felt like something good could come out of all the pain we had endured. But as time went on, it became clear that something was terribly wrong. Projects that were promised never materialized. Roads that were supposed to connect communities remained broken and impassable. Hospitals that were supposed to heal the sick were nothing more than empty shells. The money, our lifeline, was disappearing. Imagine the pain of watching a future you were promised slip away, piece by piece. As each day passed, the cracks in the system became more and more visible, and we were left wondering, where did it all go? Who was responsible for this betrayal? And how could they have done this to us? The worst part was the sense of helplessness. The ordinary people of Haiti, like me, like you, who wanted nothing more than a chance at a better life, were left standing in the rubble of a broken system. We had no power, no voice, and the ones with the power, the ones with the voice, had turned their backs on us.
But even as we were being betrayed, many of us didn't want to believe it. We held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, there was an explanation. Maybe the delays in the projects were due to unforeseen circumstances. Maybe the money was tied up in red tape and bureaucracy. Maybe, in time, we would see the fruits of the PetroCaribe investment. But time kept passing, and nothing changed. In fact, things only got worse.
The more I learned about PetroCaribe, the more my stomach turned. Billions, not millions, but billions of dollars were meant to flow into Haiti. Think about that for a moment. In a country where so many go hungry, where children can't even afford to go to school, and where clean drinking water is a luxury for the many, billions were set aside to lift us up. I remember thinking at the time, this is it. This is our chance. Imagine what $1 billion can do for a small country like Haiti. It wasn't just about numbers, it was about lives. Roads could have been built to connect remote communities, schools to educate the next generation, hospitals to heal the sick. For once, it felt like Haiti had the resources, the opportunity, to finally pull itself out of the endless cycle of poverty and disaster. But then came the questions. Where were the new roads? Why did the old ones crumble within months of being repaired? Where were the schools? Why were children still sitting under trees with no classrooms or materials? And the hospitals, the ones that were supposed to heal our sick and treat our wounded, where were they? Something was wrong, terribly wrong. It was like watching a river of money flow in, but instead of reaching the people it was meant for, it just vanished. Projects that were announced with so much fanfare either never got off the ground or were abandoned halfway through. I remember seeing construction sites that were supposed to become hospitals, with nothing more than skeletal frames and overgrown weeds. It was like they wanted us to forget that these promises were ever made. The most painful part was knowing that this money, the money that could have saved lives, wasn't just lost. It was stolen. Stolen by the very people who were supposed to be looking out for us, protecting our interests, while we were struggling to rebuild our lives. They were building mansions, buying luxury cars, and sending their children to private schools abroad. Every dollar that was siphoned off from PetroCaribe was a life that could have been saved, a child that could have gone to school, a family that could have had a home. It wasn't just money they were stealing, it was our future. I'll never forget the feeling of standing on a road that was supposed to be part of a major infrastructure project funded by PetroCaribe. The road was barely a year old, and already it was falling apart. Cracks ran through the asphalt, and potholes big enough to swallow a car dotted the landscape. It was a symbol of everything that had gone wrong.
As I dug deeper into the details of the PetroCaribe scandal, I began to see just how deep the corruption ran. It wasn't just one or two individuals siphoning off funds, no. This was a well-coordinated web of deception involving people at the highest levels of government and beyond. And at the center of it all were names that should be familiar to anyone who has followed Haitian politics: Mitchell Martley, Laurent Lamotte, and Jean-Max Bellerive. These were men who had presented themselves as leaders, as the ones who would guide Haiti through its most difficult times. But instead, they were betraying the very people they claimed to serve. I still remember the promises they made. Mitchell Martley, the former singer-turned-president, had risen to power on a wave of populism. He was charismatic, he was bold, and he had convinced many that he was the leader Haiti needed. But behind that charisma was a man who, as we would later learn, was more interested in lining his own pockets than in lifting his country out of poverty. And he wasn't alone. His Prime Minister, Laurent Lamotte, was right there with him, pulling the strings behind the scenes. Together, they funneled millions of dollars meant for infrastructure, education, and healthcare into private accounts. Projects that were supposed to transform Haiti remained incomplete or were never started at all. But for these men, it didn't matter because the money had already disappeared. I can still see the faces of the people who believed in them. The mothers who waited in vain for the new hospitals that were promised, the children who never saw the new schools that were supposed to be built, the farmers whose land remained unreachable because the roads were never finished. They had placed their trust in these leaders, and that trust had been shattered. Jean-Max Bellerive, another key figure in this scandal, had once served as Prime Minister before Martley came to power. He too had positioned himself as a man of the people, someone who would fight for the poor and vulnerable. But instead, he became part of the very system that was oppressing them. Under his watch, the PetroCaribe funds were mismanaged, misappropriated, and outright stolen. It was almost too much to comprehend. How could these men, who had grown up in the same streets, seen the same poverty, and experienced the same hardships as the rest of us, turn around and betray their own people? How could they live with themselves, knowing that they were taking money that could have saved lives and using it to build lavish estates and live lives of luxury? But the more I learned, the more I realized that this wasn't just about a few corrupt politicians. This was a system that had been built to exploit the weak and protect the powerful. And it wasn't just in Haiti, this was happening all over the world. But here, in our small, fragile country, the effects were devastating.
I started to feel like I was caught in a nightmare. Everywhere I looked, there were signs of the betrayal, the crumbling infrastructure, the abandoned projects, the sense of hopelessness that hung in the air like a thick fog. It was as if the entire country had been hollowed out, and we were all just waiting for it to collapse. And yet, even as the truth began to emerge, there were still those who refused to believe it. They couldn't, or wouldn't, accept that the leaders they had trusted could be capable of such deceit. They wanted to believe that there was some explanation, some reason for the missing funds and the unfinished projects. But as the evidence mounted, it became impossible to deny.
But as shocking as the betrayal by Martelly, Lamotte, and Bellerive was, it was nothing compared to the involvement of the Clintons. When I first heard the rumors, I didn't want to believe them. Bill Clinton, the former president of the United States, and his wife Hillary, who had served as Secretary of State, had presented themselves as champions of Haiti. They had been at the forefront of the international relief effort after the earthquake, and the Clinton Foundation had raised millions for Haiti's reconstruction. But as the years passed, it became clear that something was terribly wrong. Bill Clinton had been appointed as the co-chair of the Interim Haiti Recovery Commission (IHRC), a body that was supposed to oversee the distribution of the billions of dollars in aid that had been pulled to Haiti. But under his leadership, the IHRC became little more than a facade, a way to funnel money into the hands of a select few while the people of Haiti continued to suffer. I can still remember the speeches Clinton gave, the promises he made. He talked about building back better, about creating jobs and opportunity for the people of Haiti. but the reality was far different. Instead of investing in projects that would benefit the Haitian people, the IHRC focused on projects that would benefit foreign companies and wealthy elites. One of the most glaring examples of this was the Caracol Industrial Park. This massive complex was supposed to create thousands of jobs for Haitians, but in reality, it benefited foreign corporations far more than the local population. The workers who did get jobs at Caracol were paid next to nothing, and the promised economic boom never materialized. And then there were the housing projects, or, rather, the lack of them. Billions had been pledged to rebuild homes for the hundreds of thousands of Haitians who had been displaced by the earthquake, but instead of new homes, what the people got were empty promises. Tens of thousands of families were left to live in makeshift tents, exposed to the elements, while the money that was supposed to help them vanished into thin air. The more I learned about the Clintons' involvement in Haiti, the more disgusted I became. Here were two of the most powerful people in the world, using their influence and connections to enrich themselves and their cronies at the expense of one of the poorest countries on the planet. It was the ultimate betrayal. And yet, even as the truth about the Clintons' role in the PetroCaribe scandal began to emerge, they continued to present themselves as saviors of Haiti. They gave interviews, wrote op-eds, and made speeches about all the good they had done for the country. But for the people of Haiti, the reality was starkly different. They were left with nothing: no jobs, no homes, no future.
I can't describe the anger I felt as I pieced together the full extent of the Clintons' betrayal. They had taken advantage of a country that was already on its knees, and in doing so, they had robbed us of the chance to rebuild and move forward.
Michel Martelly, Sweet Mickey as he was once known, had become something of a cult figure in Haiti long before he entered politics. He was flamboyant, he was loud, and he knew how to captivate an audience. As a musician, he tapped into the frustrations of the people, turning them into wild performances that were part political satire, part sheer entertainment. But when he ran for president in 2010, many saw him as a breath of fresh air, a man who wasn't from the old political class, who could shake things up and bring the change Haiti so desperately needed. But the reality of his presidency was far darker than anyone could have imagined. As Martelly took office, Haiti was still reeling from the devastating earthquake that had leveled much of the country. International aid poured in, and with it came promises of rebuilding, of better days ahead. Martelly, with his charisma and charm, was perfectly positioned to become the face of Haiti's recovery. But beneath that charismatic exterior lay something far more sinister: a man who, it would later be revealed, was deeply enmeshed in the very corruption he had vowed to eradicate. The PetroCaribe funds, initially intended to be a lifeline for Haiti, were a key part of Martelly's downfall. When Venezuela created the PetroCaribe program, it was meant to help impoverished Caribbean nations by providing them with discounted oil, allowing them to use the savings to invest in development. But in Haiti, under Martelly's watch, those funds were looted. Projects that were supposed to be funded by PetroCaribe, roads, schools, hospitals, either remained unfinished or existed only on paper. Reports of mismanagement and outright theft began to surface, and many of the fingers pointed directly at Martelly and his inner circle. But it wasn't just the missing money that revealed Martelly's true nature, it was the way he ran the country. Martelly's presidency was marked by increasing authoritarianism. He silenced critics, sidelined opposition, and ruled with a kind of arrogance that suggested he believed himself untouchable. His government was rife with nepotism, with key positions going to friends and allies rather than qualified professionals. It became clear that Martelly was less interested in rebuilding Haiti and more interested in consolidating his own power. And then there were the allegations of drug trafficking. Rumors had swirled for years that Martelly had ties to the drug trade, but during his presidency, these whispers became louder. Several of his closest allies were linked to drug trafficking, and there were reports that he himself was involved in protecting the operations of drug lords in exchange for financial support. These allegations were never fully proven, but in a country like Haiti, where the line between politics and crime is often blurred, they were difficult to dismiss.
As I watched all of this unfold, I couldn't help but think about the people who had believed in Martelly, the people who had hoped that he would be the one to lead Haiti out of the darkness. Instead, he had only deepened the country's suffering. He had betrayed the very people who had put their faith in him, lining his pockets while Haiti crumbled around him. And yet, despite everything, Martelly continued to enjoy a loyal following. Many Haitians, particularly in the diaspora, saw him as a victim of political machinations, someone who was being unfairly targeted by his enemies. They didn't want to believe that the man they had idolized for so long could be capable of such deceit. But for those of us who were living in Haiti, who saw the reality on the ground, there was no denying the truth. Michel Martelly had become a symbol of everything that was wrong with Haiti. His presidency had been an illusion, a facade built on lies and corruption. And when he finally left office, Haiti was in worse shape than when he had taken over. The country was broken, and so were its people. I remember the sense of hopelessness that hung over the country in the final days of Martelly's presidency. Protests had erupted in the streets as more and more people began to realize the extent of the corruption. The country was on the brink of collapse, and yet Martelly remained defiant, refusing to acknowledge his role in Haiti's downfall. It was in those moments that I realized just how deep the betrayal ran. Michel Martelly had sold us a dream, and we had bought it. But in the end, it was nothing more than a lie that had cost us everything.
It's hard to talk about the corruption in Haiti without mentioning Jean-Max Bellerive and Laurent Lameth, two men who played crucial roles in orchestrating one of the largest financial betrayals in the country's history. As key figures in the Haitian government during the PetroCaribe scandal, their actions had a profound impact on the nation, leaving a legacy of greed, mismanagement, and unfulfilled promises. Jean-Max Bellerive served as prime minister from 2009 to 2011 during a pivotal time in Haiti's history. The country was still grappling with the aftermath of the 2010 earthquake, and billions of dollars in aid were flowing in from the international community. Bellerive was in charge of managing these funds, overseeing projects that were supposed to help rebuild Haiti's infrastructure. But instead of using the money to benefit the people, he became part of a scheme to divert these funds for personal gain. When I think about Bellerive's tenure as prime minister, I'm struck by the sheer audacity of the corruption that took place under his watch. Reports of inflated contracts, ghost projects, and money being funneled into offshore accounts became all too common. The PetroCaribe funds, in particular, were meant to be a game changer for Haiti. They were supposed to provide the financial resources needed to lift the country out of poverty and build a better future. But under Bellerive's leadership, these funds were squandered. Laurent Lameth, who succeeded Bellerive as prime minister, was no better. In fact, in many ways, Lameth was even more ruthless in his pursuit of wealth and power. He was a close ally of Michel Martelly, and together, they formed a partnership that exploited the country's resources for their own personal gain. Lameth was known for his lavish lifestyle, jet-setting around the world while his country remained mired in poverty. Like Bellerive, Lameth was implicated in numerous corruption scandals. He, too, was involved in the misappropriation of PetroCaribe funds, and his name became synonymous with the greed and corruption that had come to define the Haitian government. But what made Lameth particularly dangerous was his ability to manipulate public perception. He presented himself as a modern, forward-thinking leader who was committed to improving Haiti's economy. But behind the scenes, he was enriching himself at the expense of the people. Bellerive and Lameth may no longer be in power, but the damage they did to Haiti will last for generations. They stole not just money, but hope. They took away the one thing the people of Haiti had left, the belief that things could get better.
When the devastating earthquake hit Haiti in January 2010, the world was quick to respond with pledges of financial support. Governments, celebrities, and ordinary citizens around the globe opened their wallets to help a nation in crisis. The international community promised billions of dollars to rebuild Haiti, to heal its wounds, and to offer the people a better future. But what happened to all that money? Why does Haiti remain one of the poorest countries in the world, despite the massive influx of aid? As I began to dig deeper into the story, I realized that the promised aid was more of a mirage than a reality. Billions were pledged, but only a fraction of that money ever made it to the ground in Haiti. And even when it did, much of it was mismanaged, wasted, or, even worse, stolen. At the center of this aid mismanagement were figures like Bill Clinton, who was appointed to lead the Interim Haiti Recovery Commission, IHRC, a body created to oversee the reconstruction efforts. Clinton, with his global connections and charismatic reputation, was supposed to be the savior. But under his leadership, the reconstruction became a tangled web of bureaucracy with little transparency and even less accountability. The projects that were supposed to be funded by international aid never materialized. Thousands of houses were promised, yet only a few hundred were built. Schools, hospitals, and infrastructure projects remained incomplete or, in some cases, never even began. Bill Clinton had become a symbol of the broken promises of the international community, a man who came in with lofty ideals but left Haiti in shambles. And then there were the NGOs, thousands of them flooded into Haiti after the earthquake, each with their own agendas, their own ideas of what Haiti needed. Some did good work, but many others were simply taking advantage of the situation. They used the crisis to secure funding for themselves, often with little concern for whether their projects actually benefited the Haitian people. I spoke with locals who had watched as foreign aid workers lived in luxury, driving around in expensive cars and staying in lavish hotels, while they, the people of Haiti, were left to fend for themselves. There was a deep sense of betrayal, a feeling that the world had used their suffering for its own gain and then abandoned them once the cameras stopped rolling. But the most heartbreaking part of this story was the realization that the aid itself had become part of the problem. The billions of dollars that were supposed to rebuild Haiti had instead created a culture of dependency. Local businesses were destroyed by the influx of free goods, and the Haitian government was weakened by its reliance on foreign aid. The people were left with little control over their own destiny, their future tied to the whims of international donors who seemed more interested in photo opportunities than real solutions.
As I watched this all unfold, I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of despair. The promises of the international community had turned to ash, leaving Haiti worse off than before. The corruption that plagued the Haitian government had been mirrored on a global scale, with powerful figures like Bill Clinton overseeing a system that enriched the few at the expense of the many. It became clear to me that the issue wasn't just the Haitian leaders who had stolen from their own people, it was also the international figures who had used Haiti as a stage to advance their own interests. They had come in under the guise of helping, but in the end, they had only deepened the country's suffering.
The PetroCaribe program was supposed to be a lifeline for Haiti. Created by Venezuela in 2005, it allowed Caribbean countries to buy oil at a discounted rate, with the savings to be used for development projects. For a country like Haiti, this program was a godsend, a way to invest in infrastructure, education, and healthcare. But under the leadership of Michel Martelly, Jean-Max Bellerive, and Laurent Lamothe, PetroCaribe became nothing more than a slush fund for the corrupt elite. I remember reading through the reports, trying to wrap my head around the sheer scale of the theft. Billions of dollars had disappeared, money that could have transformed Haiti, that could have built schools, hospitals, and roads. But instead, it had lined the pockets of politicians and their cronies. The corruption was breathtaking in its audacity. Contracts were awarded to companies with no track record of completing projects, often owned by the very people who were supposed to be overseeing the funds. Projects that were supposed to take years to complete were rushed through, with little regard for quality or safety. And in many cases, the projects existed only on paper, ghost projects that never even broke ground. But perhaps the most shocking part of the PetroCaribe scandal was the impunity with which it was carried out. Despite widespread protests and investigations, the key figures behind the theft, Martelly, Bellerive, and Lamothe, faced little in the way of consequences. They continued to live lavish lifestyles, while the people of Haiti struggled to survive. The PetroCaribe scandal became a rallying cry for the Haitian people, a symbol of the corruption that had destroyed their country. Protests erupted across the country, with thousands of people taking to the streets to demand accountability. They chanted, "Cut KB PetroCaribe, where is the PetroCaribe money?" But despite the outcry, justice remained elusive. The political class closed ranks, protecting those responsible for the theft. Investigations were stalled, evidence disappeared, and the people were left with little more than empty promises. As I watched the protests unfold, I felt a deep sense of anger and frustration. The Haitian people had been robbed not just of their money, but of their future. The PetroCaribe funds could have been a game changer, a way to lift the country out of poverty and build a better future. But instead, they had been squandered by the very people who were supposed to protect them. It became clear to me that the corruption in Haiti wasn't just a series of isolated incidents, it was a systemic problem, one that had infected every level of government. And as long as men like Martelly, Bellerive, and Lameth remained in power, nothing would change.
In my search for answers, I came across stories of ghost projects' grandiose development schemes that never existed except in paper. These were projects funded by PetroCaribe and other international aid efforts, yet the money vanished without a trace. Billions had been allocated for roads, hospitals, schools, and housing, but when I traveled to these so-called project sites, I found nothing but abandoned land. One such project was a housing initiative that was supposed to provide homes for thousands of Haitians left homeless by the earthquake. Millions of dollars had been allocated, yet only a few hundred houses were built, and those were substandard, hastily constructed without adequate infrastructure. The streets were left unpaved, electricity was non-existent, and the sewage system was, quite literally, a disaster waiting to happen. When I asked locals about the homes, they spoke of empty promises and lives lost due to poorly constructed buildings. Families had been forced to return to their makeshift shelters as the new homes became uninhabitable in less than a year. I couldn't shake the haunting feeling as I walked among the crumbling remains of these homes. They stood like monuments to corruption, silent witnesses to a government that had failed its people. Michel Martelly, Laurent Lameth, Jean-Max Bellerive, and their network of allies were directly implicated in these ghost projects, awarding contracts to friends and family members who took the money and ran, leaving nothing but devastation behind. Then there was the case of a supposed hospital, a project that had received millions in funding. It was meant to be a state-of-the-art facility, a beacon of hope for a nation struggling with inadequate healthcare. But when I went to the site, there was nothing but an empty plot of land. The hospital never existed. The money? Gone. It was as if the project had never been more than a fantasy, a story fabricated to siphon funds away from the people who needed it most. I talked to one local doctor who had been excited about the hospital. He had believed that it would transform healthcare in his community. He had even left his practice, eager to join the new facility. But now, years later, he was still waiting for a hospital that would never come. His disappointment was palpable as he showed me the vacant lot where it was supposed to stand. They promised us everything, he said, shaking his head, but they gave us nothing.
It's impossible to convey just how heartbreaking it was to hear these stories from everyday Haitians, people who had put their faith in a government that had repeatedly betrayed them. These ghost projects represented not just wasted money, but wasted potential. For every road that wasn't built, for every school that remained a dream, there was a child who lost an education, a family that was left stranded, a community that was abandoned. And yet, the men responsible continued to enjoy their luxurious lives, untouched by the misery they had caused. Michel Martelly, Jean-Max Bellerive, and Laurent Lameth should have been held accountable. They should have faced justice for their role in one of the most egregious abuses of public funds in modern history. But instead, they remained untouchable, shielded by a corrupt system that enabled their greed and protected them from the consequences of their actions.
As I reach the end of this journey, I can't help but feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of the injustice that has been inflicted upon Haiti. The corruption, the theft, the greed, it's all been so systematic, so entrenched, that it's hard to imagine how the country can ever recover. But one thing is clear, it cannot continue this way. The people of Haiti have endured unimaginable suffering. They have been promised a future, only to have it stolen from them time and time again. Bill Clinton, Michel Martelly, Jean-Max Bellerive, Laurent Lameth, they all came to symbolize the failure of both local and international leadership in Haiti. These men, who should have been champions for the Haitian people, instead became their worst enemies. What makes this all the more painful is that so much could have been different. The funds from PetroCaribe and international aid were meant to rebuild Haiti after the earthquake, to offer hope in the face of despair. But instead, they became tools of exploitation. These leaders took advantage of a nation in crisis to line their own pockets, betraying the very people they had sworn to serve. I can't help but think about the children I saw during my time in Haiti, children who were growing up in a country where opportunities were stolen from them before they even had a chance to dream. They didn't deserve this. They didn't deserve to live in a nation crippled by corruption, where those in power enrich themselves while the people starve. And what of the international community? Where is the accountability for those like Bill Clinton, who were entrusted with Haiti's recovery but failed to deliver on their promises? How can we allow these leaders to walk away without facing any consequences? Clinton's role in the IHRC was supposed to be one of leadership and transparency, but it became another chapter in the story of Haiti's exploitation. As I sit here reflecting on everything I've uncovered, I'm left with one burning question. How long will we let this continue? How long will the people of Haiti have to suffer before justice is served? To the viewers watching this, I urge you to think about the role we all play in this. Corruption thrives in silence. It grows in the shadows, unchecked by the light of accountability. But we have the power to change that. We have the power to demand justice, to hold these leaders accountable, and to stand with the people of Haiti as they fight for their future. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this story, it's the importance of never turning a blind eye to injustice. Haiti's struggle is far from over, but with enough voices calling for change, it doesn't have to be in vain. Please, if this story has resonated with you, leave a comment and tell me your opinions about this video. If you believe in justice and accountability, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Together, we can keep shining a light on the truth. We can keep telling the stories that matter and hold those in power accountable. And maybe, just maybe, we can help bring about the change that Haiti so desperately needs. Thank you for watching.